Hello, my name is May, and today I'll be discussing the concept of globalization, particularly mass culture, touching on Americanization in terms of popular culture and the effects in society. So, what is globalization? It is a name given to the complex relations which categorizes the world in the 21st century. Globalization has been used in various academic literature to describe a process, a condition, a system, a force, and an age. With so many labels, it's often difficult and invites a lot of confusion. One definition from Anthony Giddens described globalization as the intensification of worldwide social relations which link distinct localities in such a way that local happenings are shaped by events occurring many miles away and vice versa. Excuse me. Seeger Manfield defines globalization as the expansion and intensification of social relations and consciousness across the world, time, and world space. I think this is a very good definition of globalization. They both are. One view, which I'll be discussing on globalization and touching a little bit, is that the United States imposes its own culture on the rest of the world. Everything's being reduced to an American global village. Everyone speaks English with an American accent, eating McDonald's, drinking Coca-Cola, watching MTV and Hollywood movies all around the world. In terms of globalization and popular culture, we need to think about the mix of economic and material power of the United States, with how individuals, particular social groups, and local cultures respond to such power, including how they might resist such powers to some degrees and use it for different ends than what it was intended. Lane Cother argues that understanding the influence of American popular culture is critical to the analysis of globalization. This brings me to the mass culture debate. We can say that mass culture refers to popular culture, which is produced by the industrial techniques of mass production and marketed for a profit to mass public of consumers. The first problem with globalization as cultural Americanization that it operates with a very reductive concept of culture. It assumes that economic success is the same as cultural imposition. Art, for example, cannot be produced by techniques or conditions which produce mass culture. It depends upon the inspired genius of intellectual artists working outside the constraints of the commercial market. It also assumes that the dominant globalizing culture will successfully inject it into the weaker local culture. That assumes people are passive consumers of cultural meanings that supposedly flow directly and straightforwardly from the commodities which they consume. This analysis seems to suggest that agency is always overwhelmed by structure, that consumption is just a shadow of production. From McDonald's point of view, people are organized as masses. They lose their human identity and equality. They're related to one another, neither as individuals nor as members of the community. David Ransom also refers to American society as lonely cowards. From these points of view, mass culture is standardized. It's formaic. It's repetitive. It lacks intellectual challenge and stimulation. It does this by discouraging efforts of thinking while creating emotional, sentimental responses to it. It doesn't want the audience to think for themselves. It simplifies real-world problems, encourages commercialization, celebrates consumerism, and is only concerned with making profit. You can see all around the world there's McDonald's in every single country, whereas Japan, China, and they have their own kind of versions of McDonald's. So mass culture really just, celebrates capitalism, commercialism, consumerism. There is also a threat to high culture by mass culture. It undermines by undermining between elite and popular culture. QD Leavis makes this clear in her analysis. I really think she explains this really well. So, quote, she says, To refrain would to exercise self-discipline. For only the strongest minded are likely to practice. For only the unusually self-disciplined can fight against the environment. What she's trying to say is that to fight against mass culture, you have to be self-aware and have, self-discipline and control. She also argues about other ways of preventing mass culture with research, education, and she says that only the committed intellectual elites can do this. So globalization changes and even destroys previous modes of culture, but it also creates new forms of culture by supplying new resources from what was seen as foreign, gradually absorbed as second nature. So perhaps there won't be a shared global culture by all people, because local can resist the global. So I'd like to leave you a quote by Edward Said, who observed that all cultures are involved in one another. None is single and pure. All are hybrid, heterogeneous, extraordinarily differentiated, and monotheistic. Thank you.